Hi, Steve Gumash here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. And what we have this time is the Mazaki Shitogami or white paper number 2 Kudauchi finished petty 150mm knife. And so as stated, the core cutting edge steel in this, the center hard steel, is a Shitogami white paper number 2 reactive high carbon steel. Heat treats around 61, 62 Rockwell typically for the target. The construction has on either side of that hard core steel a soft stainless cladding for easier maintenance, and the cladding does have an applied black or Kudauchi kind of protective finish on it as well. And in this particular line, it's definitely applied later. It's not part of the smithing scale like a traditional KU. Let me clean this knife up. Got a little bit of oil on that for shipping. So the construction on these, you can see that the weight and dimensions will vary just a little bit from knife to knife. And so the weight on this one is 91 grams or 3.2 ounces. The edge length is a little undersized. The rest of the 4 knives I've got have been oversized, but this one's a little undersized. 143mm or 5.6 inches at the edge, about 11 inches right on the dot in length with the handle. And then the knives tend to be fairly tall, and they also are pretty thick coming out of the handle, but then they thin out nicely and have a pretty consistent taper all the way down to the tip. And this one is no exception. So I got about 3.8 millimeters in thickness of the spine above the heel here, the back of the heel, but then halfway down you can see how thin it gets. So this got down to about 1.6 halfway down the blade, and then about an inch or so from the tip it was about 1.2, and you can see the tip thins out nicely. So the taper on these is impressive. So don't be too concerned about the number of the back of the heel and the thickness. It really doesn't impact the knife performance much at all. And here's the profile or the edge choil shot. So these are thin at the edge. The 210 I used performed excellently. So these are all similar geometry, so they're all should be excellent performers. The fit and finish on these is nice. All 5 of them have had consistently straight blades, clean grinds, so that consistency is really good to see from a maker. Blade height on this is 34.2, and you can kind of see it's got that mini Gyuto kind of shape. So on petties, sometimes you've got ones that are less tall at the heel that are more like a utility knife style. Then you've got the ones that are taller at the heel like this that have a mini Gyuto shape, and this one does have that. The handle is octagonal ambidextrous oak with a buffalo horn ferrule, and you've got a little bit of a step there between the wood and the ferrule. It's not that much, but it is there on all the knives. Tight handle install on here, nicely done. Let's see, the circumference is appropriately a little bit smaller in the handle for the size blade, so it's about 66 millimeters or 2.6 inches here where the wood starts to come into the, right before it goes into the ferrule. And the balance point on this is basically right at the end of that handle on there. In fact, if I put it here, it kind of balances right on the end of that handle. So that's your balance point. Let's get a little close-up of the blade here. These are nicely finished. They've got a nice Kasumi finish on them. You can see the edge steel peeking out there. They do have hand-chiseled kanji on there. It's a little hard to see because what they did, see if we can, there we go. What they did was chisel it or engrave it. It's hand engraved, but then they sanded it, and then they put the finish on it, so that kind of fills in the engraving. So it's not, it doesn't jump out at you, but it is there. And there's some on both sides. It's fairly muted, but if you look closely, it does have hand engraved, you know, those little chisel marks on there. So that's a nice touch. The profile, let's take a look at that. I think that's about the last thing. Oh, the edge. I'll give the edge maybe 4 or 5 out of 10. This one has a little bit of some inconsistencies in the edge, but they basically grind these to a 0 grind, so they take them all the way down to the edge. There's really not a secondary bevel that I can detect on them. So what I would probably recommend, you go ahead and put an edge on this, and at least put a micro bevel on it to kind of strengthen that edge a little bit and clean it up. You'll probably want to do that on these knives. I did that on the 210, and the steel sharpened up beautifully. It's easy to sharpen, takes a really nice razor sharp edge if you do your part. But I would suggest that you can try it as is, or you can put a little bevel on it. I'm going to suggest putting at least a micro bevel on it to strengthen the edge a little bit. So here is the cutting profile. Again, kind of just a mini Buto profile, so this will work nicely on the board. You got fairly decent clearance there on the board. It's hard for me to do that with this angle I'm at, but you do have some board clearance there. And you can rock this a little bit as well, so pretty cool little knife. So if you're looking for something small for this kind of utility chores or small chores, and you can get a little board work done with it, this is a pretty cool little knife. So this is the Mazaki Shidogami or White No. 2 Kurouchi Petty 150mm knife.